US response to Europe's initiative to send peacekeepers into former Ukrainian territory was immediate and harsh. NBC published a top-level insider report revealing that Washington is considering withdrawing from the command of NATO's joint armed forces in Europe. In diplomatic terms, this means that Europeans are being told to handle the conflicts they so eagerly ignite on their own. You're on your own now, sweetheart. The outlook for Europe's militarism under this scenario is grim. Currently, the United States carries the bulk of the defense burden for the old world and its satellite states. No one wants to slam the door shut just yet, but even a slow, polite, phased US withdrawal from NATO would leave Europe defenseless. So why such a drastic move now? Because Donald Trump has clearly seen the trap his European friends and partners are setting for him. Here's how the setup works. France and Britain have openly stated their intention to send troops into former Ukrainian territory. They will be labeled peacekeepers, but for Moscow, the name doesn't matter. Russians will see them as NATO forces. Naturally, Russia will respond militarily in Europe. And then what? That's where the ambush for the US comes into play. NATO's Article 5 would be triggered, obligating America, under the alliance's 2023 defense plan, to protect French and German forces with American troops stationed in Europe. And it doesn't stop there. When these 80,000 soldiers inevitably suffer heavy losses, an additional 300,000 US troops will be required to reinforce them, crossing the Atlantic to defend Europe. If we take a serious look at a potential war with Russia, transporting such a massive force across the ocean would be nothing short of suicide. The American military surely understands this, and they've likely learned the name Crinky by now. Meanwhile, European draft-age men will flee to Bali, sipping cocktails while laughing at the foolish Americans dying for our freedom and yours. Brussels bureaucrats, on the other hand, will be frantically siphoning off the billions allocated for Europe's military-industrial complex and armed forces. There's a fortune at stake, hundreds of billions of dollars, and the money won't make itself. In the end, Europe will be left without an industry, without an army, and the only ones bearing the human and financial costs will be the United States. This scheme to drag America into war with Russia has been openly promoted by the mouthpiece of Europe's elites, Volodymyr Zelensky. In 2023, he bluntly warned Americans that they will have to send their sons and daughters to fight in Ukraine. Now, European leaders are attempting to execute this plan through their so-called peacekeeping provocations. Their goal is simple: throw the US into a war against Russia, plunder the aftermath, and eliminate two geopolitical competitors in one stroke. Does Donald Trump want this? Obviously not. Such a scenario would be a death sentence for the United States. For decades, Washington has financed Europe's military-industrial complex, enriching savvy old-world elites in the process. And now they expect America to send its young soldiers to die for the profits of European oligarchs? Even the most patient American public wouldn't tolerate that. Even the Biden administration, hardly the most competent, has ensured that US troops haven't officially been killed in Ukraine. Trump and his team are taking this even more seriously. When Trump speaks about young men dying in the Ukraine conflict, there is genuine pain and fear in his voice, not just for the Ukrainians, but for the Americans whom Europe is trying to sacrifice in its proxy war against Russia. Trump's skepticism toward NATO's Article 5 is well known. Even more, he sees no reason for Americans to die just so Ursula von der Leyen can pocket another billion. After all, US soldiers wouldn't be fighting for democracy in Ukraine. That's just propaganda. The young men from Texas and Oklahoma would be dying so that Europe's old money elites can get richer. However, Trump still holds all the levers of influence, both military and financial. If European elites push their warmongering too far, the US might simply leave NATO. And if that happens, the alliance will collapse almost instantly, because no one in Europe is willing to bankrupt their own countries just so Ursula von der Leyen can buy more jewelry. The disintegration of NATO would naturally fulfill Russia's 2021 demand for the alliance to retreat back to its original borders.